All right, we're here at my VermiHut indoor worm bin, and today is rotation and harvest day. So I'm going to take apart all 4 of these trays, and we're going to rotate them and add another one on and take one off to harvest. So last time we were in here, I was only supposed to take 7 days and rotate them, but this is my first video back since my son and daughter-in-law's wedding and dropping our other 2 sons off at college. So it has actually been 33 days. So let's just go ahead and pull all these trays off, and this one is called the top feeding tray. So let's pull it off, and it has been up here for 91 days. It should have been about 60, but because of everything I just talked about, it has been 91. So here we go. All right, so what you see here is the pre-harvest tray, and this is the tray that's going to get totally harvested, and I'm going to enjoy all these awesome castings because I am starting to seed start for the fall season of gardening. So let's go ahead and take this one off, and we were actually going to see this again because I'm going to show you a unique way I like to harvest this tray. Now this tray here is the oldest inoculating tray, and just by looking at it, it kind of looks like the worms have processed it, but nothing has gone in here except for dried bedding. No food, no liquid, any of that kind of stuff that I put in, just what has gravity fed down from the other 2 trays into here. So this is going to become our new top feeding tray, but there is one more tray underneath, and let's take a look at that. Now this one is the newest inoculating tray, and same thing, it had all dry bedding put in it, but you can see some of the wetter spots and where the worms have gone, and there's a little bit of a hole in here, and that is because underneath this tray is some of that bottom. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of break that off and make sure it goes back in here. And let me see if I can show you what I'm talking about underneath right here. You see that? So I'm just going to do a balancing act and just kind of grab from underneath here. Try not to get too messy. All right, I made a little bit of a mess, so we're just going to go ahead and fill that hole back in and some on the side here. So right now we are looking at the bottommost tray, and because it had this tray with dry bedding and the one above it with dry bedding, chances are we didn't get any liquid down below, and that's kind of the goal for me with my VermiHut. I run it a little different from the directions, but what I have found is the way I run it helps to inoculate these dry trays so that when they come up to be the top feeding tray, the worms just absolutely devour everything in it super quick and turn it into vermicompost. So let's go ahead and take this one off. All right, so what you see here is pretty dry. It's just a little bit damp, and it looks like we've got a couple worms, one right there and one right there that I'm just gonna put into one of the trays. And let's see what is on this kind of barrier here. And underneath, it looks like we've got one little worm that might have perished and another dry one here and here. So for the most part, the worms that come down here are discovering that it's way too dry, and for the most part, we don't find any down here. So let's kind of clean those off. And I'm also seeing some mites right here. And then this looks like it could be some springtails or something like that. So this down here is pretty inhospitable for any kind of creatures. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to rinse this off, and then we will rebuild this whole VermiHut. All right, so not too bad for having not looked down here for 91 days. Clearly the worms are not making a habit down there, and the onesie twosies that aren't really living to tell the tale. So let's go ahead and rebuild this, and the first tray that we're gonna put on the very bottom is a brand new inoculating tray. So there we go, right there. This is just one of the trays that is completely filled with dry cardboard shreds. Now this VermiHut came with 5 trays, and I typically at any one time am gonna have 4 trays on it, and one is empty. And this tray can be used as a sifter because again, it's got 1,600 holes on it, and I just kind of keep it out and ready to use. So at any time I can fill it up and put it on the bottom if you want to have a 5 tray system. But we're only gonna go with 4 trays, and here is the newest inoculating tray. Now, you've already seen this. This is the tray that used to be on the bottom. It once was the new inoculating tray, but now it is the older of the inoculating trays. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of fluff it up and mix all this dry with some of this wet bedding, and it will be ready for us to put another tray on top. So one of the things I need to do kind of after I'm done aerating it is I need to make it kind of flat and level so that as I put each tray on top, I don't have a leaning Tower of Pisa here. I've got an actual straight columned VermiHut. All right, we're ready for our next tray, which is going to become our new pre-harvest tray. So here is the tray that used to be the top feeding tray. This is the one that we did all those cool top time-lapse experiments in, and now it has become the pre-harvest tray, and it is going to sit down here in this position for about 60 days while the worms process it. So again, I'm going to go ahead and aerate this one, and let's see if there's any worms in here. And sure enough, lots of great worms. And if there's any kind of old stuff, I'm going to take that out and we'll put that in the new top feeding tray. This actually feels so awesome. It is like gorgeous castings. Let's just smooth this out and we'll be ready for our new top feeding tray. Here we go. Remember this tray? I just put this stuff on here, but this is the old inoculating tray, and it has now become the top feeding tray. So as I dig in here, we're gonna feel some moist bedding, but it is bedding. There are some castings on top, and we're gonna find some worms in here, but this was just put in as dry shredded cardboard. So anything that you see in here is from the liquid that dripped down from any kind of food that we fed, and from the worms kind of coming down here and dragging castings or making castings out of any of the cardboard that was in here. So this is absolutely fantastic, and we are going to kind of fluff it up, and you're going to see the height in it is going to go higher, and I am really surprised at how many worms are in here. This is really great. And because of these inoculating trays that I put on here that go in dry, I never have any kind of liquid or leachate underneath in that very bottom basin of the VermiHut. And that's kind of how I like to run my VermiHuts. I like to kind of inoculate the bedding with all kinds of good microbes and liquid from the worms, and no better way to do that, in my opinion, than to have that just sitting on the bottom. It also helps you to store your trays. So if you are just starting out, you just got a VermiHut or any other kind of worm tower that's similar, you can start a tray and then also just put a dry inoculating tray right underneath, and you are going to be off to the races. So let's continue to aerate this, and then we're actually going to feed it. So there we go, we've aerated it, and I have a little hole here that we're gonna put our food, and I always like to add bedding every time I feed, and this is no different, even though this is all bedding. But another thing I wanna show you is how many holes are down here. This little square is the only part that doesn't have holes, but everywhere else there are all these hundreds of holes that the worms can come up and down with no problem at all. So in is gonna go some shredded cardboard, and typically I will put it in dry. This is just a little bit damp because I'm starting a new bin, and be looking out for that video. But next we are ready for the food for this top tray, and this is the first food this tray has ever gotten, and this is the food that is going to entice the worms from all the trays down below to come up to this one. So we'll throw in some watermelon, sure to be juicy and get some of those inoculating trays more wet. But I've also got some bread here, or toast. You know what, I think I'll put watermelon right over that because that'll help absorb it. Sometimes when you put bread in, it can dry up and just kind of form a rock, and the worms don't really get in it. But then we've got some sprouts and some broccoli, some lettuce stalk, got a half of an apple here, and some more lettuce and strawberries, along with another lettuce stalk right there. Now again, like I let you know in most of my videos, I've got 4,000 to 5,000 worms in here, so this is a lot of food. And certainly if you're just starting a VermiHut, you know, maybe 4 strawberry tops is what you want to feed initially if you have somewhere between 500 and 1,000 worms. And then you can check on them in a week and see how they're doing, but they're just getting used to it. Now, in addition to the food, I also like to add in some dry pantry items that have expired, and mostly grain. So I think in here we've got some flour, we got some graham crackers, and we have some steel cut oats. And none of that is required, but it's just another way for me to get rid of some of my food stuff that I have. And this is used coffee grounds, another good food source for them. Lots of nitrogen included in here. And then finally, I like to go in with some eggshell grit, and the worms really like to come up and take this grit because they use it in their gizzard, and it helps them grind their food and make it smaller for them to eat and digest. All right, now that we've fed them, I'm gonna add just a little bit more bedding on top, and then what I'll also do is I'm just gonna bury it. what we need to do is we need to try and get those worms that were in the pre-harvest tray out of that tray, because we want to harvest that tray with all those castings with the fewest amount of worms in there. So the way that we do that is we put the pre-harvest tray that we're now going to harvest on top of that new top feeding tray, and we just agitate it. And that's going to get them to move down, and they're going to go down through all these holes. So this will take me somewhere around a minute or two, and then I'm going to leave them for somewhere around 10 minutes and let them do their diving. And then I'm going to come back and agitate it, and I might even skim some of these castings off the top, and then I'm going to agitate them again. So let's go ahead and do a couple rounds of that, and then we'll come back and kind of talk about how much castings we got out of this haul. All right, so it's been close to 10 minutes, and some of you might recognize this as my cocoon nursery. So what we're going to do is just kind of skim the top and add all these castings into here. So what we're trying to do here is take this layer of castings that doesn't have any worms in it, and I'll keep going down and until I start to see more and more of their pink bodies, and then I will stop. All right, that's pretty good right there. So now I'm going to agitate again, and then we're just going to keep doing that until this thing is completely empty with castings and almost all the worms are down into the tray right below this. So this is our 6th and final agitation, and you see most of the worms are completely gone and they have gone down below. So let me just finish this up real quick. All right, so for the most part, we got most of the worms out and most of the castings out. I'm just going to take this off camera and finish it up. But you can see all the holes that they went through, and let's look down below to see if we see some worms right underneath this. And sure enough, you can see a lot of the worms that came down from on top and that are now down in here. So now we've got some castings. I will put how much they weighed in a spot somewhere around here. And let's go ahead and put a little piece of newspaper on here. So we have taken a tray off and harvested it. We added a new inoculating tray full of dry bedding, and we still have 4 trays on our VermiHut. So I hope this helped you learn how I rotate, and maybe you'll give it a try if you have a worm tower, or maybe get a worm tower for yourself. So I hope you're having a great day. I hope your worm bins are doing well. So happy vermicomposting, everybody. Take care now.